What's up, Pod Pals? It's your buddy Adam, and this is Podcasting Business School, the show where I teach you how to love your podcast like a hobby and build it like a business. This is a very special podcast audit episode with my new pod pal, Jamie, from the NeedleXChange podcast. Jamie, how's it going, my friend?
It's good, man. I'm pleased to be here. This is going to be a wild ride.
I concur. We had a little pre-chat and we're already off and running. So
Yeah.
I want to dig right in. Let's set a goal for our session. I want you to think 6 months out from today, if everything is going really, really well, you've got great momentum with your brand and your show, paint that picture for me.
I think for me, it's something where I've been able to automate a lot of the back office stuff so that I'm able to have great conversations with people in my sphere and just turn that into useful content for people. I'm in quite a fortunate position that I'm quite well placed within a very strong niche, and really it's like the monetization of that and the streamlining of that is my goal.
Okay. And with your brand, it's needlework, cross stitch. That's the area that we're operating in.
Yeah, embroidery and textile art.
Okay.
So I have various strands to it, but NeedleXChange is a fairly new venture where I'm just on a bit of an agenda to promote textile art as a serious art form and to have conversations with people about creativity.
Cool. All right. Now, what do you feel like is the main thing holding you back right now? What's the main roadblock, especially from a podcasting perspective?
I mean, it's dollars. I think that's what it boils down to a lot of the time. I'm really lucky, I've been doing my job as Mr. X Stitch. I started it in 2008. I'm quite well known in the space. Starting this podcast and having conversations with textile artists is a really easy thing for me to do because I'm just contacting people that I've written about in the past, and they're really happy to talk to me. We have a bit of a laugh. It's very much working out how to turn that into a tangible, solid business. Because I think when I started, this is the third podcast I've ever done.
Okay.
That sounds good. I started doing one in 2011 that was called Stitching and Junk, where it was just jibber jabber to do with needlework, but also to do with really random things. Then I've been the co-host of a slightly more corporate podcast. And now this is me just going out on my own and having great conversations. But I think I was just like, well, if I get enough listeners, I'll be able to do ad revenue and stuff. Having listened to you, I now realize that that's the really, 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 really long game. And actually, I want the game where I turn it into a much more lucrative stream that's nice and robust and builds a good bit of sustainability.
Okay. Yeah. So I like where you're coming from on that. You're speaking my language here as far as, sponsors. That's kind of the icing on the cake. And it is a little bit longer down the road as we build up our audience base. What is the ideal like client or customer acquisition scenario for you? If somebody listens to your show and they become obsessed with your brand and they want to give you money, how does that work? Are they hiring you? Do you have online courses? Do you have programs? Is there anything that you offer right now that they could buy from you?
So it's funny. So I've got like a 3-layer business. So I have like the Mr. X Stitch blog, which is just a textile art blog that's kind of underpinned by ad revenue. I also have a contemporary cross stitch magazine. And when I first started the podcast, I was like, well, it seems like an obvious one to put those two things together. But actually, the way the podcast has evolved, it's become much more to do with textile art and talking to artists. And so I feel that the thing that's the best fit for me is almost to help people as a sort of creativity coach. Like, I haven't had these conversations on the podcast, but I have chats with people about the business side of things because I'm not an artist, but I've been around doing marketing, email marketing, and had so many conversations with people that thing of trying to get them past the pinch points or trying to get them to focus on the one marketing channel that makes sense. That's stuff I'm good at, but it's not stuff that's evolved out of the podcast quite yet, if that makes sense.
Yes. All right. You made me happy when at the whole last like 60 seconds of what you just said. I'm like, all right, I 100% get it now. And we can kind of apply like what I do. Like, I'm a business coach in the podcasting ecosystem, and I teach people how to, leverage a podcast to build a brand and make money. You could do a similar thing in the textile artists, creatives, embroidery space where you're doing business consulting on there are people that want to kind of transform their art from a hobby into something that actually they're able to make money with.
Mm.
So I like that idea. I'm always kind of looking for that consulting offer. Where is that consulting offer that we can kind of pluck out of this scenario? And people are like, all right, Jamie is X amount of years ahead of where I am, and I want to hit the fast forward button by hiring him to show me how to do that. Is that making sense so far?
Yeah. See, the funny thing was, it was actually when I was recording a podcast with one artist, and she talked about the fact that she'd had a mentor, and it was someone who, in her case, had just helped her evolve her creativity, the content that she was producing, and help challenge those thoughts. And I was like, that feels like the sort of thing that I'm capable of doing. And so I've kind of done a few dry runs with other people, and I always end up talking about this stuff anyway, because it's like my day job. You just end up nerding out with people,
Yeah.
So I had a conversation the other day with a man who did needlework, who had a podcast, and you couldn't shut us up for days, I swear to God. But it's so it feels, and without, so I've done lots of different things. I've run needlework prizes, I've written a book, I've been on the telly, I've done various things. Sometimes you make decisions that feel like a really good fit, if that makes sense. Sometimes you can do things where you're being pulled off in a certain direction. But when I decided to do NeedleXChange, it just felt like zoom, like it just fit me completely perfectly. Like, because I talk a lot, occasionally I'm funny, sometimes I'm sensible, and it just felt like a natural fit. This mentoring thing, again, just kind of felt like the right thing to do. It felt like something that, but I struggle as well with like not wishing to sound egotistical about it. Not just going to go, oh, I'm sure I can help you with all of your problems.
Right.
But at the same time, feeling that I probably can, because of the conversations I can have with people.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So to clear a few things out in my brain, as far as how we want to kind of put the pieces together, when you're talking about mentorship, do you want to do one-on-one? Do you see that as like a group, a mastermind program? Because some people are like, I don't want to do any one-on-one anything. Some people are like, I don't want to do group coaching. I'd rather do one-on-one. Where do you fall on that line?
So I was listening to this really wicked podcast called the Podcasting Business School, where this idea of like one-on-one versus group coaching literally came up today. To me, it feels like it's one thing to talk about like business marketing sense, but I feel like when you're talking to people who are on an artistic path about carrying on and against pushing through their own personal barriers, that feels like quite an intimate thing.
Yep.
So in many respects, my thought is to have a cohort of maybe 6 slots over a 2-month period or something like that, where people can talk to me on a weekly basis, almost like individual therapy, and going through that and just having those slots available so that we can plot some progress along time. Now, I understand the value of community and those kind of things, but I just think that because this is quite an intimate thing, and because we will talk about marketing and those kind of things, it feels like the one-on-one is the more natural feel in this respect.
Yeah. I mean, I almost see this as a phase 1, phase 2 offer that, I always strive to answer that what happens next question as a coach, as a consultant, as a mentor. So I could see you doing a one-on-one consultation or mentorship paid session, or maybe there's a series of sessions that people pay for, and they kind of graduate that phase 1 and they go, well, what happens now, coach? And I love having maybe a small group cohort at the back edge of that. And you're just putting people in that are in similar situations, similar experience levels. Maybe you want to mix up their experience levels, and almost like these mini mastermind membership groups. And you meet up once a month for X amount of dollars. Like, you've done that initial legwork with them and kind of getting them all to a certain spot with their creativity, with their business, whatever that initial goal is. And then you move into that next thing. So I'm trying to think of like scalability. You've got a lot going on with all your different brands and blog. Like, you've got a lot going on. So I think leveraging one-on-one, higher ticket, being paid what you're worth, into something that's mid-tier pricing wise that you could just put people into. And that way because these people, you'll want to keep working with them. They'll want to keep working with you, but the one-on-one isn't going to be scalable. So kind of having that back edge, simple mastermind-ish membership sort of a thing. I mean, it could be as simple as a once per month meetup. It could be more complex than that if you want to build something more complex than that. But I always like looking at that recurring revenue stream off the back edge. And I think that what you're trying to accomplish with these creative minded people, I think you could do pretty well with that. So any thoughts on kind of like a phase 1, phase 2 scenario?
I think the interesting thing is there's a lot of sense in what you say there. I think it's the building out the platform for phase 2, and in some ways, I feel like I won't necessarily be able to do that until I've done quite a lot of phase 1, because I can go, here's my approach to Instagram marketing. I can go, here's how to do Pinterest, all of that fairly sciencey stuff as anybody else can do. But when it comes to here's how to push past your own voice talking to you and telling you your art is crap, that kind of stuff, that I feel like there would need to be more of that, almost case studies. And I think that's one of the things where now, having, listened to you, having reached some of these conclusions, I'm now pondering on how I can evolve what effectively is just a plain interview podcast into something that becomes a more natural fit of that.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple of ideas and I've got a couple of questions, but I'd like to hear your ideas first.
Well, I mean, I think we're both leaning in the same direction. So an interview-based podcast, if you want to get to the point where you're getting mentorship, coaching, consulting clients, we need to add a little more expert positioning. So I think like what we're doing here with the coaching style episode would be perfect for that. The thing you have to be careful in the creative entrepreneurship space is that you're a creative minded person. The person on the other side of the equation is going to be a creative minded person. It could turn into like a 3-hour conversation of just like random ideas everywhere. So I would try to really focus on one pain point and go, okay, what is the number one thing right now that is the block? What are we dealing with that is the absolute block, the first domino that needs to be pushed over? Focus on that and you'll deliver a great episode and they'll get tremendous value and they'll be experiencing momentum. And then just having, this type of an episode, at first it's a little bit of a slog where you have to kind of chase people down and people will no-show you and all this stuff. And that still happens to me. Like you get the confirmation email. I'm like, hey, are you coming? I got to make sure that you're coming because I get no-shows still. Like I still have that happen, but I've done hundreds of these episodes where a lot of people will listen to my show and they'll binge listen and they'll hear me do this a dozen, 20, 25 times. And now from expert positioning standpoint, I'm really in there. Like I'm that top of mind person with a business coach, podcasting coach, etc. So we want to get that going. Solo episodes are going to be something to look at too. And the good news is solos are easy to produce and put out. You can, binge or batch record those. So you have several of those out there and you can just load them up into your feed. So, I mean, that's the direction I would kind of lean towards. My 2/3 content rule of 2/3 of your content needs to have you positioned as the expert if you want to sell more of your own programs, products, and services. So is that go in the right direction for you there?
Yeah. So it's interesting the way the format of the podcast has evolved is I average a conversation with someone that maybe is like an hour and 10 minutes, something like that, edit it down a bit. And then after looking at my analytics, I sort of realized I had this big drop off after half an hour. So now I've split it. Instead of being an hour fortnightly, it's now a half hour weekly or thereabouts. Okay. And so thinking on, then one of the things I do at the end of each podcast is we talk all around the houses about creativity and stuff, but then I ask them like their favorite book, their favorite film, their favorite album and stuff. Just make it more interesting, not just about like get underneath the surface or something. And so it feels to me in some ways like I could almost slot in that what's the one thing that's getting in your way right now? Because I agree. I don't know if it's that like book Ask by Ryan Levesque or something, but it's just like, what's that one thing? It occurred to me that's a logical step. And if I have that in the same piece as the favorite album and those kind of things, and it's almost like there's this naturally two parts of the conversation, which is their story one week and then them as a person the next week, just kind of a bit more, less reflective, but maybe a bit more practical or something. It feels like there's two parts to it there that could work quite well.
Yeah. I mean, I would even encourage you to make it part one, what they're teaching on, what they're an expert in. Part two, a little bit more of their background, but like the real target of the episode, that part two would be to showcase you on what you can do as a consultant, as a mentor, as somebody that adds a little bit more to the conversation. Where you could, I want you to be able to showcase what you can do from a mentorship perspective, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because then I think it naturally follows that, maybe every 10 guests or so, I can reflect back and go, here are some takeaways about overcoming creative blocks, or the first marketing thing you ought to do, or how you build that in. Because already in the conversations I've had, things have come up, themes have come up. So it's not too difficult to pull those solo episodes out. And I feel like that then does, like you say, validate my value as a mentor or someone who's just a sounding board for ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the general rule in podcasting is if you want to sell programs, products, and services, if you only do interview episodes, the other person is the expert, not you. And that's how your audience views it. So we have to find those opportunities to show off what we can do as an expert with the content. So yeah, I think solo episodes, anything where you can do some coaching or mentorship style episodes, even anybody that you've worked with in the past, or somebody that that you think that, that's just like, oh, I know that if they just did this one thing, that their brand and their ability to monetize would be so much more effective. Bring them on and you just run the show, and don't have any like imposter syndrome about it. Like, you've got a giant brand, you're an influencer in the space. People want to hear what you have to say, not just necessarily see you interview other people. So like, I think you could do really well with that content. And, some people are kind of shy about featuring themselves on their own show. But I think what you said earlier about, like, you're not making yourself a big deal with this brand. You're just like, but I have things to say. And I'm kind of the same way. I'm not like, I'm doing this because I'm famous. Like, one of my son's friends came over for the first time last weekend, and Henry's like, yeah, here's my dad's podcasting room. He's like, your dad's a podcaster? And he's like, are you famous? I go, no. I go, and if I am, I'm the least famous person you've ever met, buddy. And but I thought that was kind of funny. But anyway,
I always like that. I always say that to people, because I'm sort of craft famous. I've got a lot of followers on Instagram, but nobody bothers me. I don't ever get paparazzi down the supermarket or anything.
Yeah, I'm podcaster nerd famous. If you're a podcasting nerd, you're all about
I say to people, I'm like, I'm the most famous male cross stitcher you've ever met. And then I go, can you name another male cross stitcher? That's a nice thing.
Number one. Jamie is number one. All right. Now I want to make sure, you said you had a couple of questions that you want to make sure that we covered. I want to make sure that we have covered those.
Yeah. So the other thing is then, so in the past, I had a podcast called Stitching and Junk. And even with the Lovecraft show, like, I quite like having a bit of a laugh. Now, the way NeedleXChange has come along is it's gone a bit serious. And, it's all conversations on the art of thread. And it's fine. It's sincere. I'm trying to make it cool. I'm trying to have proper conversations. But at the same time, somehow I don't seem to have made it very much fun. And it's interesting. But, I would much rather get someone to tell me a joke, or, back in the day when I was doing Stitching and Junk, on one episode, we talked about pre-industrialized textile manufacturing. And we also talked about homosexual porn stars. And that's the kind of balance, you see. It's not for everybody, but I don't want to be too sincere all the time. I want a bit of irreverence. And so I'm trying to work out, because I've got there's a curator voice in my head. And because, when you talk about art, you start to talk like this, and we talk about juxtaposing the diaspora and all of that sort of stuff. But that's not necessarily me. In some ways, I just want to be a bit funny. And I'm just wondering whether over time, I mean, I'm only, my 13 episodes in, so it's still early days, but I just wonder whether actually I can allow myself to loosen up a little bit, and whether, I don't know. I just want your take on that, how your voice evolves over time, how you find your natural fit.
Yeah. Well, nobody, whether it's you or anybody listening in, nobody needs my permission to do anything, but sometimes it helps to get that. And like, I give everybody full on permission to be themselves to the 100% level. And like, I want you to show up as the person that you want to listen to. Yeah. Like, when I do email marketing, I'm like, okay, what email do I want to actually read? I got to type that email. If I'm creating an episode, I'm like, how would I want to, who would I want to deliver this to me, and how do I want them to show up? And, we all get nervous, especially in the podcasting space, of like, I'm going to do something and all my people are going to unsubscribe. I'm going to change one thing and everyone unsubscribes. I've been doing this for going on 8 years now. I've just felt like the more of myself that I am, and the more that I let people in, and the more just unfiltered Adam, the more my ideal people find me, So if we're kind of like 80% Adam, 62% Adam, then, I feel like that not inauthenticity, but not 100% authenticity, she kind of shows through. But when I'm like, screw it. Let's just talk like I talk and be who I am. My people that like so many of my clients become my friends because we're just like very similar minded and we like to joke around and we don't take ourselves too seriously. And so just be more of that. And I feel like it'll help you attract the right people that you just freaking love working with. Like when
Mm.
people come on and hire me, I this new woman that I just met an hour ago and I'm going to help her launch a show. And we sat and talked for an extra 20 minutes, just joking around because we were just cracking each other up. I'm like, this is great. We're going to have so much
Mm.
fun together. Like that's, if you put that vibe out there. So I be weird, be quirky in your space. Like let's add a segment that you think is totally weird and entertaining and fun that would make you want to listen. Um, I put
Yeah.
challenges out there to podcasters all the time. I'm like, you know, let's see what happens if you be a little bit weird, be a little bit funny, make it entertaining, create the show that you would be obsessed with.
Yeah, it's a funny one because like when I'm talking to them, when I'm doing the interviewing, obviously I'm trying to be quite a good interviewer as well and learn to give people the space to tell their stories.
Yeah.
But it is very much me, I don't have a problem with that bit. I think it's almost just a preamble because the way it started out is I've got my cool music and then like I've just written a script and I talk over the top and then we get straight into the interview. So I don't even do any of the stuff that you might do about going, hi everybody, it's Jamie here. Summer holidays and knock things out of whack, or any of that real life stuff, because it's almost like I'm trying to be very polished. And then sometimes I just think, like, what am I doing? Why don't I just go, all right, everybody, it's Jamie here? And maybe even, I suppose in some ways I want a certain timelessness. I want people to be able to take all the episodes and not feel like I'm moaning about Christmas for some random reason or something. But I guess it's just trying to find that balance of talking. Maybe I just need to, rather than talking aloofly as though I'm just playing on a stage somewhere, or maybe I do just need to imagine I'm just talking to a person and just go,
Yeah.
hey everybody, this is what's happening, and by the way, this and this, or something.
Yeah.
I feel like I'll feel it out and I'm not afraid of it. It's just funny the way, because I think I'm on a bit of an agenda to make sure that people understand embroidery is a valid art form.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you've got that pressure on your shoulders to be the person that that brings that legitimacy to your space. And you don't want to be like, I mean, I felt that way a little bit podcasting wise, because a lot of people, like I tell them I'm a podcaster and they're like, are you famous or are you homeless? Those are the two questions I get. Like, do you live in your mom's basement, like in Wayne's World? Like that's like, I get those
Nice.
questions.
Yeah.
So I feel like I have to like stand up for podcasts. I'm like, we're all awesome and we make lots of money. So screw up. So I get what you're saying there, but I would say just kind of slowly ratchet up the Jamie factor and be like, all right, now I'm going to add this segment. Let's see how that feels for me. Let's see how the audience reaction is. And then maybe we take it up a notch. Maybe you get some reaction like that thing you did at the end. That was so awesome. I love that. Like I am not a betting man, but I would bet that you'll get audience reaction. You try something that's a little bit more of your personality infused in there. I bet that you'll get feedback that people are like, that was awesome. That thing. Like when I had my health show, I used to read, we had sponsors and I would read ads and I would make fun of the ad, the people that are paying, and that got people to remember what I was talking about, and like weird stuff like that. It works. And then people would listen to the show and like, hey, the best part of your show is the ads. They're funny. And I'm like, I'll take that as a compliment, I guess. So little stuff like that. Be you, be quirky, and be unafraid to ramp up the Jamie factor.
Yeah, I think it's fine because at the end of the day, I can random stream of consciousness and always edit myself back out again, can't I? Which is
There we go.
That's the dream come true. Really.
There we go. We can always hit the edit button. Well, cool. I want to make sure that we are able to shout you out, shout your brand out, your website. If people want to dive into the world of Jamie, where do they go?
Right. So you can start off at mrxstitch.com for the best needlework textile art on the planet. If you're into cross stitch, then X Stitch magazine is the best cross stitch magazine on the planet. I only do the best things on the planet. And if you want to hear interesting artists talk about their creative process and eventually me get a bit weird at the end, then NeedleXChange is your new favorite textile art podcast. Thanks very much.
Outstanding. And we me and Jamie had a deal. Every time I say outstanding, he has to take a drink, and he's got some sort of whiskey in there, so it's really getting it's
Very dangerous turf.
It's very outstanding. So, all right, we are going to wrap this one up. We have finished on a high note. Appreciate you all listening in. If you want to come on the show and do a podcast audit, just like my pod pal Jamie, head to the website, podcastingbusiness.school. Get signed up, get on my calendar for 2024, and we will see if we can help you level up your podcast. And with that, pod pals, I'm going to send you out into the world wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. We'll see you next time.